So security is very important for any of the website. As you can see, if we are going to this website, that is imdb.com, then you can see there are many things on this page we'll be able to see. Okay, on the home page only we are able to see many of the movies, what to watch and what is their rating and all. Okay, so what will happen if the security is not there? Then anyone can go ahead and log into this website and change this description of these movies, change this rating of the movies, and anything which is not like which is not a good approach if you are on the web and if you are working with websites. Okay, so for that purpose, to stop people from doing that, we have string security in our systems. So welcome to Code Cop. Today we are gonna have another video, that is part 5, and that is the last video of our Spring Boot Masterclass from Scratch series. Okay, so in this video we'll learn like how to integrate Spring Security in our application. So if you can see here, we have created this application that is running on this 8080 CRUD all movies, and if you'll go to Eclipse, you'll be able to see like we have this controller here. Okay, in which we have covered like all the CRUD operations, whatever are there, all the movies with ID, update movies with ID. And if we are hitting this URL, particular URL, localhost 8080 CRUD all movies, then we are getting a list from the database of all these movies. So next we want to cover all these endpoints, or like secure all these endpoints from the unwanted users or unwanted authorizations from users. So that nobody can go to our website and change the director name here and change the rating here. We don't want to do that, right? So what we'll do, we'll implement Spring Security in our applications. So here we are having this movie controller and we are having all these endpoints here. Okay, so if I'm going down here, so what is the purpose of Spring Security? So whatever endpoint we are having here, API movie, API/movie ID, or let's say here 8080 CRUD all movie, this is called resource, to which a client is gonna look and hit this resource and it is gonna get a output in result. Okay, so this thing is called resource. So what it will check, Spring Security, it will check if whether this resource is protected or not, whether we want to protect this endpoint or not, this movie ID endpoint, whether we want to protect it or not, all movies, whether we want to protect it or not. So first it will check that, and if it is not protected, then it will return you to the resource. So in most of the website, so when you go to any of the websites and you log into their register page, so generally all the register page and the login page are unprotected resource, because we want public to land on them and register themselves or log in themselves. Otherwise, if you will protect the register resource, then how the public users are gonna register or login? Okay, so for that purpose, we don't protect the register and login resources. Now again, if we go back to this flowchart, if the resource is not protected, then it will gonna return that resource to you. You will get the output. And if it is protected, then it will check whether your username and your user passwords are there or not, or is matching with the database or not. And if they are not matching, if they are matching, then it is gonna check whether you are authorized user or not. So suppose I am an admin and I want to delete movies from this particular IMDb website. So I want to, if I am an admin, then only I am allowed to add the description here. Normally users, generally I am logged in, I am visiting this website as a user, then I am not allowed to change any of these things, change the title, change these descriptions and all. I'm not allowed to do that because I am a user. That is my role. And if I am login with the admin role, then I might have the permission to change the title of this movie. So that is the difference between authentication and authorization basically. So we are going to keep this video very simple on the basic level, as it might be your first video you're watching regarding Spring Security. So let it be simple. Okay, so if it is authorized, then, and if it is not authorized, then the access is denied. I'm not able to write anything on that particular portal. And if I am authorized, then I'll be getting that endpoint and I'll be able to write or whatever the actions I want to do, whatever actions my user role is allowed to do, that actions will get returned to me. Okay. So if I want to implement that Spring Security in my project, so currently I am able to access this URL directly. No authentication is required. What if I add Spring Security dependency in my application? So let's try to add it. I will go here and I'll try to add this dependency here. Add starter. I would say add starter. And here I'll be getting an option of Spring Security. If I will search here, Spring Security, or I will search with security, then you can see I'm getting this Spring Security here. I'll click on next. Then it will bring this Spring Security changes to my POM. And if I'll click on finish, so let's stop the application for now. And we are gonna build our project once. So it's getting built. So once it is built, and if I am gonna run my application, then if I'll try to, let me run my application as Spring Boot app. So as you can see, my application is running at this point. Okay, so now let's try to hit this endpoint. So if I'm trying to hit this endpoint and if I'm clicking enter, then you can see a login page is appearing here. What is happening behind the scenes? Like, I have not added any of the pages here. So this login page is provided by Spring Security to us. And what is the password and what is the username that we are going to provide here? So for that, we need to go into our Spring logs. So here you can see one password is there, and by default the user is user for Spring. Okay, so if you will write user here, and if you want to write the password, then you will copy it from here, and if you will gonna paste it there, then you can see you are able to access the resource. Congratulations. So your application is protected on higher level. So what if I want to use different username and passwords? I don't want to use a password that is given by Spring. Okay, so for that purpose, currently there is one layer that has been introduced between you and your resources. So your resources are these controllers, and one layer that has been introduced is this login page. So if I am closing it here, and if I'm trying to again log in here, so I'm able to access it. If I'm trying to access it on incognito mode, and if I'm trying to get it here, then again the new session is required. So for that you need to require again some username and password. So what is happening behind the scene? So what is happening here is, if you will see here, so generally what was happening without the Spring Security, we are not using Spring Security. The request is intercepted by directly through this dispatcher servlet, and the dispatcher servlet is the front controller, which so all the requests that we were hitting from our URL were going to this dispatcher servlet, and then this dispatcher servlet is passing to that respective controller. So this is happening behind the scene. Okay, so if you are implementing controllers and all, then you will not be able to see this layer. Okay, so what Spring Security does, like it introduces a filter, or I would say a layer in between your incoming request and dispatcher servlet. So that thing, whatever that thing that is introduced here in between incoming request and dispatcher servlet is called filters. So when Spring Security is added to your application, then all your requests are coming to this Spring chain filter first. Other than filters provided by Spring Security, we can add our own custom filters as well. So these are the filters generally that has been used here, but those are provided by Spring. So the filter chain after authentication and authorization pass the request to dispatcher servlet, and then it pass it to the controller. So how we are going to configure our username and password in our Spring Boot project? Okay, so generally what happens is, your I would say your request is going here in the Spring Security filter chain, and it is passing through all the filters. There are n number of filters there, that is from the Spring side, and then your authentication request with credentials, it goes to the authentic manager, and then authentic manager have the implementation for the further different number of authentication provider. So suppose if you are logging with the password, then you have a different authentication provider for that, and if you are logging with some OAuth or something, I would say some passcode or something, then we have a separate authentication provider for that. And generally what we are going to use in our application, we are going to use authentication based on username and password. So for that, we are going to need user detail service. Okay, so let's do this practically now. First of all, you can see we have not created any packages here. Actually, for the best practice, we have to keep all the models in a different package, or the controls in a different package and all. So we should do that. So let's first stop our Spring Boot application, and let's move all these classes to respective, I would say, packages. So I want to create a new package here that will be codecop.API. So first I am creating for controllers. So here, if I am going to finish this, a new package has been created here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move my CRUD controller to this package. Okay, I'll click on OK. So my CRUD controller has been moved to this project package. Similarly, we need to create a separate package for this services and repository. So let me create them all. So here, this one is for service. So I'll move my service class here. And here, this is our main application. We don't need to move it anywhere. And one of the packages that we have is model, or I would say entity. So let's name it as model. Models. If I click on finish, the new package is created. So I'll move this movie model into this. Okay, so I have created this employee package earlier as well, employee class, in which we have created this employee ID, and this table has been created in database. So we don't need this now because we are dealing with the movie scenario. So let me delete it here. Okay, so I have deleted this movie. So let me create one more package here, that is repository. Or I would say, let's name it as repos. If I'm going to finish it, then I'm going to move my remove repository here. Okay, so all the moving is done. So for the clean code, because it was working earlier as well, but to make it more managed, or I would say, so that we can have a look like all the controls are here, all the models are here, all our repos are here, all our services are here. So for that purpose, we have created this, I would say, project structure. Okay, so after moving, let me start my application. Let me build it first. And if I'm clicking on even build, it should build without any errors. So it is built. Now if I'm let me try to run it again. Okay, so it is building now. Let me try to run it as Spring Boot app. So now it is up and running. Let me try to hit that endpoint. So it's asking for username and password, that is user, and password it is generating separate. So let me add it here, this password. Okay, so let me add this password in our browser, and if I'll add it here and I'll click on sign in, then I'm able to fetch the data. Okay, so now we have done all the movements of the project classes. Similarly, we can also access this via Postman. If you will see here, so here are multiple classes of ours. If I want to get this endpoint, and if I'll click on this, so you can see I am unauthorized, because in authorization I have given no auth, so I have to give a basic auth, and here I have to give the username, that is user, and password here I need to give, that is this, and if I'll click on send, then I'm getting the results. So similar things are happening on browser as well. I just wanted to show you that login page, so that's why I picked the browser. Okay, so we are gonna have a different username and passwords for our application. So it is like obvious we need to store those username and passwords somewhere. So what we need to do, we need to create a model. Okay, so here I'll create a user model. If you will go here, new class, and you will click here, so I have created this user class, that is our entity. So we have to declare it as entity. So let me create this class here. So having this ID and username, password, role, and getters and setters, all of these we are having in this user table. Okay, so once we have created this user table, then we need to create a repository as well. Okay, so we'll go into this package and we go to new class and we'll create a repository as well. We'll name it as this will be an interface. So I've created this interface here, and it is gonna extend JPA repository, extends JPA to connect to database. It's gonna extend JPA repository, and here I'm gonna pass user, and here I am gonna give the type of primary key, that is long. Okay, so we should import this user as well, and here we need to give one method, that is find by username. Find by username is there. Okay, it should look like this. Find list, we are not going to use find list. Find by username, the simple repository we are gonna have. Okay, so as it is a repository, let's annotate it with repository annotation. Okay, so we have created a repository now. So now what's next? So the next thing that we require is we need to do our manual Spring security configurations. So for that, so as you can see, generally now we are using these Spring configurations, so that this page is coming here in our application. So if I'm going to hit it, then you can see I'm again showing you, but let's have it again. So we are having this inbuilt configuration of Spring security in our application. So what we want to do, we have to override them. So for that we have to do our manual configurations. So let me create a config class for that as well. I would say let me create a package in which we're gonna have configs. And okay, so now we want to annotate it with configuration, because it is gonna have our configuration for the Spring security, and to tell our Spring security that don't use the inbuilt configuration, use this configurations. So we need to add this annotation, that is enable web security here, the Spring to use these configurations and use this security configurations. Okay, so first of all, for that purpose, it is used generally inside on the inside, it uses security filter chain. As I have already mentioned to you regarding this security filter chain, shown you like this is security filter chain that is Spring gonna use internally. Basically your HTTP request is gonna pass through this chain of filters, and then it's gonna reach to you. Also, we are gonna use username password authentication filter, and here you can see Spring security chain is working. Your request is going through this. So generally the Spring security filter chain is sequence of these filters that Spring security applies to each of the incoming HTTP requests to your system. These filters works together to perform a various security related task. So firstly, they're gonna pass you pass your URL, they're gonna check whether some users authentication is available or not, and then if the resource is available or not, is it a public resource, it is a protected resource. Then after doing all these configurations, then they pass the request. Okay, so to do that, to create an object of security filter chain here, we need to write it like this. So as I'm keeping this tutorial as a very low level, or I'm keeping this tutorial as a very high level. So I'm keeping this tutorial as a very basic level so that you can just get an idea of like how to use Spring Security. It's not like you will be get too much professional in the Spring Security. It is a configuration time of a Spring Security. So these things in a bigger organization, these things takes place at a bigger level. So you have to give time to understand Spring Security. This video is just to give you a basic idea of like how Spring Security works internally and how using username and password you're gonna reach out to your resources or gonna fall back. Okay, so let me create this bean of public that is gonna of type security filter chain as security filter chain. You can see here it is coming, and let me name it as security SECURITY filter chain. So as you can see, everything that comes as an HTTP request is passed through this method. It's gonna pass through these bean, or I would say security filter chain. So here it will take out input as HTTP security p security, and here is this object. So for like any exception related issues, we just will throw some exception here, throws exception, so that we don't get anything later. And once it is done, then this is gonna return a HTTP object, that is the build HTTP dot build. It's gonna return a HTTP object here. So now you can see we are returning something here, so it's not giving any value. So first, what we will do with our this HTTP security request? Okay, so first we will check like we have to disable CSRF tokens first. I'll tell you in the later videos if that is important, like how to disable, like what is CSRF tokens and how to disable them. That will take time. I'll tell you later. So first you need to do HTTP.CSRF. You want like user that user should like register themselves in your application first, so you don't want to authenticate that particular URL. So for that purpose, what you can do here, after this request, you can do, so here you can see after this request you can use you can disable that particular endpoint. Okay, so here if I'm going to use this request measure /register, then we have to do this permit all, and then after that, other than this, if any other request is coming, then that needs to be authenticated. Generally we have like on the sessions, there are two types of sessions, that are stateless and stateful sessions. So in generally stateful sessions, it is typically, if a session is stateful, the server maintains a session for each client of this session, contains information like user identity, preferences, or any other data that is being requested in that particular session. So for our application, we don't want to maintain any of that ID and password, or we want like on every visit we want user to enter username and password. So for that purpose, we are going to use this stateless session. Okay, so to configure our sessions as stateless, after this with default, you need to give this session management customizer. Just import this customizer from here, and after that you'll be able to see and import this session factory creation policy as well. So our session is now stateless. Okay, and we are returning this HTTP object, so we have to write it return here, and at the end we are returning this HTTP build. We have built a session with the customizer with default basics for the postman thing, and here we have authenticated all the requests which are coming from HTTP. And if you want to give any of the requests that you want, like it should be allowed. Okay, so generally we are going to register our users on one of the user controller endpoint. So for that purpose, I think you can give this particular I would say you can give this after this request. Before this any request, you can give just here dot, and you can just write end matchers or not. You can write this request matchers, and here you can pass one of the request here, that is register. And if you want to permit all for this particular request, then you can write this permit all, and any other request will gonna get authenticated. Okay, so currently we have created a security filter change in which we are disabling CSRF tokens, and we are authorizing using this lambda expressions. We are permitting all the requests which are coming at this endpoint and authenticating other alls. Okay, so now what do we need for our application? We need to create a user detail service that is going to interact with our our authentication provider for fetching the user details from DB, I would say. Okay, and we also need to create a bean of authentication provider. As you can see in earlier only, I have told you like here the authentication, once the request is getting passed to authentication manager, then it is going to need authentication providers and user detail service. So we need to create them as well. So here let me create it. User detail service. Here we are using this Nova password encoder, so we need to import it. And for the user detail service, we need to create an object for that as well. So that is we are going to create at the upside here. We need to create this user detail service object as well. Private user details service user details service here, and you need to auto wire it. Okay, so I think authentication provider thing is done. So our all the requests are going to come through this, and they are going to use this authentication provider to fetch the data from that I would say DB from the repositories, and it's going to use this user detail service. Okay, so user detail service itself is having this method load by username. That is, we are going to use in our repo that is already we have declared is find by username. So it's going to load all the data with the username in the user detail service, and then it's going to match the data with the username that we are providing from DB. And if it is matching, then we are allowed to access that particular URL. Okay, but before that, for the registration, we need to create a here in the controllers new class that is user controller. I'm gonna save it. So for now, we'll keep it very simple. We'll annotate it with a REST controller. Let me import it as well, and auto wired host mapping on this endpoint. We are gonna register users, and here we'll be getting users from I would say Postman. Let me import all of them. Import user from models. Okay, so here we are going to use repository directly, and we are going to save that user directly in our DB from this endpoint. So let's check if our endpoint is working or not. Okay, so you want me to check that? I'll stop it. And as that particular endpoint is free from any authentication, then we should be able to access it. So let's try that. If I'm running this application, user detail service bean is required. So I think we need to create a user detail service as well first before running this. So let me create that too. So in our service section, let me create new class here that will be our custom user detail service, or you can name it as my user detail service. And it generally implements the user detail service that we have provided from Spring user detail service here. Let me implement this. As this is a service, let's annotate it with service. It is annotated now, and we are using a repo here. That is our user repo. So done, or I would say user repository. As you can see, we have named it as user repository here. So let's move back. Name it as user repository. My user details service. What's wrong with it? Add unimplemented methods. That is load by username. I think that is it wanted to be load. Okay. So this has been imported, and let me import repo as well. Let me import for auto wired as well. So now this load by username method that was there in user detail service has been loaded to our this my user detail service. So we need to give an implementation here for that. So as it asked us to implement the unimplemented method that is load by username, so that is type of user details. Okay, so let us create a object of type of user details, and let's try to return it. So what we can do here, we can just search with this username in our repository whether the user exists or not. So here I'm using user, and if I am able to find that user in my repo, then I'm gonna add it to the user details. So user repository, or whatever we have used here, user repo, and if I will give like find by username, so if I'm passing user here, then the data should come in my user. Okay, if data is not coming, if user equals to null, then we can print here like system, or I would say it's out that user not found or anything, user not found. Okay, and if that user is found, if user is found, in that case we are going to return an object of user detail service and passing that to user new user details, passing that user details, and here you are going to pass that user. Okay, so but okay, so user is here, it has been coming from models, and here you can see we are not able to return an object of user details here, but this was the unimplemented method that we have implemented from this user detail service. So what should we do now? What should we return here? Because user detail service is not allowing to create an object of itself. Why is it not allowing? Let's move into it, and we can see here it is an interface, so we cannot allow it. So what we can do, user detail is having all these methods inside it: get password, get username, is account non-expired, is account non-unlocked, etc. So what we can do, we can create our own class. Okay, so we can create our own class which is implementing this user details. So for that purpose, we can go inside here. Okay, or you can give it as user detail IMPL, user details IMPL. Okay, if I'm giving it like this and if I'm clicking on finish, you can see it is coming here as class. So if you will go inside this in this class, and if you will implement the user detail service, which is our requirement only, because we were not able to return an object of that class here in our user detail service, we are not able to create this class, so we are implementing it here. Implement user details. Okay, so now what it will ask to override all the unimplemented methods. So let's override all of them. So that is this collection extends grant authority, whether you want to grant authority to these or not, get password, get username, or many more. So currently we're gonna implement only these only. Okay, so let's do it. Like it is returning a collection of grant authority. So here we want to grant authority to what? We want to grant authority to one of the roles, that is user. Okay, so for that we need to write it like return new. You can see we are not having an issue. And in the get password method, we need to return simple password of the user here. So first we need to add that private user and user here. We don't need to override it because we are not want to creating a bean of that. So here, if I am gonna get password, then I need to user dot get password. I am gonna returning it here. And if I want to return a username, then return user dot get username. Okay, so now everything is done. We can now create an object of this I would say that extended or user detail IMPL here, and we can simply return it. So that's why we are not providing auto add here, because we want to do the constructor injection. So here we have done this now. So I think our issue will be resolved for now. So yeah, I think pretty much everything is done for now. So let's try to run our application if we are able to do. So let's check if we are able to running our application. So the thing is simple. So firstly, we need to create a repo for our user repository. That is simple. We have already done that. And later in here, we need to create a user detail service because it is generally used by authentication provider. As you can see already in our configs, we have created a bean of authentication provider which wanted to use user detail service. And for that user detail service, we need to create our custom user detail service so that it can use this implementation load by username. And here, if we want to use this user detail service, then in that case, we need to implement this in any of the class that we created here in user detail implementation. And here we have pass like for all the roles which we are gonna give authorization. That is for user roles, we are gonna give authorization. And here we have just initialized it, and here we are returning user get password and all. Okay, so try to run our application, and then we'll try to register a user here on this endpoint. As it is not being authenticated, it is permitting all the entries, so we'll try to add a user here. Okay, so let's run the application. So as you can see, the application is running and we are not having anything here, username and password, which we should apply. We should not apply anything. So we'll go here in this post register user, and we'll register this user that is named as code corp, and password is xyz123. Okay, and the role is user. If I am going to send this, so let's see if the user has been registered successfully or not, as we are getting this message. So let's see in our DB. So as you can see, our ID, our username is codecorp and password is xyz123 and role is user. So the user has been registered in our system. Let's register one more user. So codecorp has been registered. That is, let's add another user that is named as Spring, and password is 1234. Okay, and the role is admin. ADMIN. Okay, so now send this as well. So I think this is also registered here. So if I will run this query again, you can see our two users has been registered. One is having the role name admin, other is having the role name that is user. Okay, so now let's try to access our endpoints with this particular thing. Okay, so as you can see, we are having this endpoint that is named as get all movies. So currently we are not providing anything here. So let's try to add. We are giving 4 or 4 1. Okay, so if we have to pass basic auth here, so we need to pass some username and password. So what we should pass here, that we have registered in the DB. Okay, so we have registered with the codecorp username. Okay, so let me copy this and let me write it here, codecorp, and let me write the password from there as well. That is xyz123. So if I am gonna pass this password in Postman here, so I should get the output. This 401 means this user is not authorized. The empty user is not authorized. So if I am click on send, then you can see I am getting all the IDs and all the movies which were available there. Okay, and if I'm giving any wrong password here, xyz1234, if I'm giving this and if I'm hitting this, then you can see I'm not able to get it. I'm not able to get anything. And if I am giving again, the password is correct, and if I'm hitting, I'm getting the output. So as you can see, all the red endpoints are secure now. We are able to access all the endpoints with our username and passwords, and they all are protected. So I think that is it for this particular video, and our masterclass is complete here. And in the next or upcoming videos, let us suggest like what should we do next. Okay, so basically in our first video I told you about like how we should do so this was our course basically. In the first video we told you like introduction to Spring Boot, how to setting up your project and all. In the second video we told you like how to build your first RESTful web service or a first RESTful API. In third video we covered connecting to a database. We are using MySQL and you can use any other. So we connected to the database, we learned how does database connection works. We read so we created a CRUD API in which we created some of the endpoints and like how to get data from DB and all. And in our last video, we have covered like string security and how to like secure over all the endpoints that we have just covered. So maybe you can suggest something what we should do next. In our next video, we'll be doing that only, or we'll think like we can create some other courses like this. Okay. So yeah, that is it for this video. So if you have not watched all the videos of this series, you can go here and you can type code corp here and you will be able to see this channel. And here you can see in our playlist we have created this mastering Spring Boot API playlist. So here we are gonna upload this particular video as well, because currently there are 5 videos. After this video there will be 6. Okay, and yeah, that is it. And we have also initiated one more series that is doing it with code cop. If you have not watched this, just have a look on this as well. So yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you.